Thank you for clicking on this video. I'm pretty sure that you came here because you wanted to remember or figure out how to do the brakes on a 2018 Nissan Pathfinder. Front wheel drive or all wheel drive is pretty much the same thing on the front brakes. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna put it in park, and we're going to put our parking brake on. And then the next step is we're gonna chalk the back wheels, because when we lift up the front end, I like to lift up both of them at the same time. So when we do that, we don't need it rolling and rocking. And of course, if you're working under the vehicle, that's dangerous, especially if I'm working by myself. Safety first, always. The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pop the hood. Take my brake reservoir and open it up just a little bit. And when we push those pistons back into the caliper, this level is actually gonna rise. And you want to have this cap off. When you do one set of brake pads, check this, make sure it's not going to overflow when you do the second brake pad. The next thing we do before we even get this off the ground is we're going to break our lugs nuts loose. I've got a really small 4-way. If you have a larger one, you're able to put a little more torque on it. But I've got those mechanic forearms and I can usually break them free. You want to do a star pattern. And so this size is a 21 millimeter. That's a good and tight one. So we're gonna leave it there. I'm gonna go to the other side, then we're gonna jack it up. Ooh, it's a little chilly out today. Feels good. We're under the vehicle. See the tires right there? We're right behind the front tire, about where the hinges are for the passenger side. If you look under here, you've got these two little notches. That's your lift point. That's where you want to lift it up at. Because it's reinforced right here, and that's a good balance point. If you go further back, it's front heavy, so it can actually tilt forward on you. So you want to go a little bit more forward with that. I use this point as a jacking point, and usually right around here is where I put my jack stands. I never get under a vehicle without jack stands. I'm going to take these off. We're gonna roll it over to the side. You can see there that we're not quite touching, but we don't have a whole lot of room on our brake pads left. The other thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna check the tie rod ends by moving it, see if we have any slop. I'm moving it back and forth. We don't feel any slop. It knocks back and forth with a little bit of loose space in the middle. So you've got a 17 millimeter right here. So I like to pop it with my hand. If you got sensitive hands, you can definitely use a hammer, or you can put another wrench on the end of this, right? So I'm gonna drop you down here. Let's, can't see it, but let's get this other one. Right. So I got my brakes here. I'm going to use my brake box as a catch-all. I'm going to use that for my bolts so I don't lose them. There's one, looks like that. You can actually grab this and push it towards you. So that way you have a little more access to it. So my two pistons are right back here. So what I want to actually do, I've got this tool here. I will actually put it in here and kind of compress those pistons, because those pistons are in the closed position. Almost broke it, there we go. And now these should just come right off. So now you've got your pistons here, which we're gonna have to compress in. I'm gonna put some gloves on, makes wash up a little better. Use this to kind of pop it off. You always want to inspect your brakes. These are, I believe, the original. I've got about 140,000 miles, so I got a lot of good life out of this. They are ceramic. There are some shims on the back, and then we've also got this hardware here and right here that we're going to replace. It can get a little bit tight. I'm going to get the one that was already in here, and we need to compress these in. So I've got a C-clamp. You want it to the center as possible, but of course we've got our brake line in the dead center. Go just a little bit to one side. We're going to compress it. And as we do so, we're going to make sure that we're not putting them in sideways. Having this here will help ensure that they remain flat. Man, that's awesome. It's going in nice and smooth. I'm going to have to go a little bit on this side because we've reached our max here. Compress on this side. And you just got to pay attention to what you're doing. All right. Beautiful. All right. So now we can take this off, and you can see these are now flush. So we can move this up here out of the way, make sure it doesn't fall. We don't have to take off the holder for the brake caliper. You have this hardware we're going to have to open up. And this actually has a little diagram that tells you how to set this up. So it would be important to read these in directions for the first time in your life. So we got one done. These are kind of a pain in the butt to get out, but it can be done. I believe all of these are pretty much identical. You just have to be able to put them in. So there we have it. Definitely inspect your brake pads. Make sure they look good. Make sure there's no damage to them. These are your little wear indicators. One of these clips in. This part here clips in to this up here. And the other one is an indicator when you get down to a certain amount of wear. This is actually going to cause your brakes to squeal when you apply the brakes. So if you ever wondered what that was, that's exactly what that is. So I've got two with the clips on here and two with the clips down here. There's a few different ways you can do this. As you can see, you can just kind of push it in just like that. The other side is going to be a little more difficult because it's harder to see. See if I can do it one-handed so you can kind of see what I'm doing. Just like that. That's beautiful. See how these are nice and flush? Now we can take our brake caliper and slide it right on. You've got your hose. Make sure your hose isn't backwards. Now we get our little bolts that we had set in the box so they didn't get dirty or pick up any grime or dirt. There we go. There's one. There's two. And if this is the first time you're doing this, just remember, if you put one bolt in, just get it hand started. Don't tighten anything up until you got every single bolt you have to put on started before you do anything else. So we're gonna do that, hand tighten it. So all we do is we just give a hand tap. They don't have to be super tight. That's brake one done. So essentially I'm just going to run these up a little bit. Do it in a 5-star pattern. We're not even gonna tighten them up yet. We just want to get them snug. When we get them on the ground, then we're gonna snug them up. Now here's another life-saving tip. A lot of people take their tires off and they just throw it to the side. Take it down, slide it underneath your car. If a catastrophic thing were to happen, this tire will save your life. This thing will support the car while you're able to get out, and it won't crush you to death. Now you know. As you see, this is almost at max, but I haven't compressed the driver's side pistons yet. So I'm gonna get in my car, I'm gonna compress that, and you're gonna see that go down a little. So it went down a little. So now what we need to do is we need to top off this to the max, because as we wear our brakes, it's gonna go down and hopefully not below the minimum. This is why you don't fill it up until after you're done with your brakes. Using a synthetic .3 from Lucas. I'm not sponsored by anyone, but this is just what I'm using today. So you may be wondering kind of what to look for when you're taking your brake pads off. A lot of people just replace their brake pads, think nothing of it. Definitely want to look at this, look at the wear patterns. If you've got one side, basically the inside or the outside, that's wearing a little faster than the other, that means your brake caliper isn't floating properly, right? So you got to look at that, maybe put some anti-seize on it, definitely clean it up. Typically I'll take a brake cleaner, clean everything off, all the dust and all the ceramic dust that came with it. That's a good thing to do. The other thing is if you've got a driver's side that's wearing down and the passenger side that looks like it's never been used, that's another problem. And you know, you've got a proportional valve that kind of equalizes the braking pressure. If you have one of those, definitely take it to a mechanic. You could have a more serious problem. You could even have an interlock brake that's breaking up when you don't even know it on one side and not the other. So definitely a lot of things to think about. That's just a little tidbit I thought of on the top of my head. Yeah, so let's go and put this tire on. So again, we're gonna go ahead and get them all started, get them threaded on so we don't cross thread anything, and we can use this to kind of run them up, save a few seconds. All right, so now we're good. Got both tires on. We can go ahead and drop this to the ground. Then we'll tighten these up by hand. Probably need about 90 foot-pounds of torque. Wait until your arm clicks. That's the torque wrench there. Let's drop this and let's tighten it up. All right, so now we're essentially going to get them hand tight. And then, once I get them all good and tight, go ahead and put a little torque wrench on it. Click. That's about 90 pounds. Click. 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 And click. Oh, yeah. I'm glad it's cold out here, because if it was hot, be sweating. I like working in the cold, but not too cold, because these things kind of get a little numb, and man, it's arguably some of the worst pain you'll have, busting your knuckle on a cold piece of steel. Let's get the other side, and then we'll go ahead and break in these brake pads. If you want to do the rear brake pads, I also did a separate video on how to do those as well. So those are about the same way to do them. A little bit smaller brakes. I go over the break-in process on how to do that and why we do it. Thank you for clicking on this video. Hopefully I have some good information on here and maybe a good, easy, step-by-step way of how to change the brakes on your 2018 Nissan Pathfinder. I believe it's 2017 to 2019. Could be wrong, but I believe that's about the same. Almost any vehicle is very similar to this. The hardware differs depending on the make and manufacturer, but other than that, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Now I'm ready to go on my road trip. Now, if you like what you see and you want to see more of these videos, let me know. If there's something you want me to cover, I'd be happy to try to talk you through it or provide some content on that. If you're an outdoorsy person, I recommend you check out my other channel, Miles Out Right Here, where I cover mostly grilling, cooking, outdoors, camping, hiking, all that stuff. So I've got a new video that I'm coming out with where I go up to northern Minnesota from Kentucky and I photograph a great gray owl. I go on the Gunflint Trail, basically tour around and do a lot of wildlife photography. So definitely a highlight of every winter. And hopefully you'll go check that out. I'll put a link to my channel in the comments and the other video for the rear brakes. Thank you for coming and hanging out with me today. I appreciate you being here, and be safe.